to the November 9th, 2023 Board Facilities Committee meeting. All or a portion of this meeting is being recorded for the purpose of public broadcast and/or internet posting. We're going to start this evening with our public comment. The public comment session is typically limited to 15 minutes for a 90-minute meeting like this one, but given the number of people who've come out to speak, we're going to extend that time tonight to a 30-minute public comment session so that more people have the opportunity to speak. If for some reason we exceed that, which it doesn't look like we will, you can always email the board. Our emails are on the district website, and we invite everyone who would like to speak further to come to the action meeting next week as well. So we're starting public comment at 7:31, and I'd like to start with, oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce ourselves. My name is Joanna Stira. I'm the chair of the committee.
Linda Palsky, School Board Director.
Chris Burdnick, Business Administrator.
Tom Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Chip Taylor, School Board Director.
George Steele, Director of Facilities.
Gary Sanderson, School Board Director.
Erin Aronson, Solicitor for the District.
So it is still 7:31, so we'll start public comment with Tim Daly.
All right, Tim Daly, Lower Makefield Township. Obviously I've been coming to many of the meetings. I've been here all day, so some of you have already heard what I had to say. So I'll try to add to more additional stuff and then go back. So, first my concerns is that I don't feel that the administration has done a proper review on the renovation and add, and I do think that the facilities committee should ask for them to go back to the drawing board because we just really haven't heard anything about what they really did. And then speaking with some of the, the community members that are on that panel, they didn't either, and that's greatly concerning. So I'm all for a new building, but it's about what we can properly afford, and I don't think that we have put our best foot forward because Dr. Smith had made a decision from the beginning. He does not want to do the renovation, and he has stated it over and over and over again. And it's not his choice. It's the school board's choice. His job is to do what he's told when he's told to do it or get out. And he was told to do a renovation package, and he didn't put his best effort forward. And I want you to make him go back to the drawing board before you cast a vote. Secondarily, with the building plans. If you're going to move forward with the new building, obviously that becomes more of a financial boondoggle with our unions within the community. And obviously all of us in the room have read the newspapers and we're aware of the federal investigation that is going on, for which Pennsbury has twice been part of those federal investigations in past building projects because of the involvement of one particular union that is the focus of this investigation. So to give me and I think many others comfort in this community that you're doing it for the right reasons, and this is not about making sure money goes to a preferred union who gives kickback monies to Steve Santacero, Bob Harvey, and all these other politicians that make the money finds its way back into your candidate re-election bank accounts, is that if you're going to move forward with the double demolition new building, I want to ask that no union who is under federal investigation be allowed to produce any services on this project until that investigation is officially closed. And I think that will give a lot of people comfort that you're doing the right things when we're sitting and looking at numbers and, they change from one meeting to the next since Mr. Burdnick and Mr. Smith can't figure things out and Robert and I come in and blow up their numbers each and every time and they go back to the drawing board. We're still, even what they presented tonight, 800 million, 900 million, which I still think is under forecasted and it's not taking into interest rates properly. If we're going to spend that kind of money, everyone should have comfort that when you have a big project like that, any level of corruption is wiped out, and making sure that union like that is not included would be a great thing.
Thank you.
Next to speak is Mr. Robert Abrams.
Robert Abrams, Lower Makefield Township. I have a million notes here from the other meetings. We need a second opinion. This is makeover number 4 by PFM, as far as I can tell at this point. Every time we challenge PFM's numbers, they go back to the drawing board and give us a new number, which means we're right, and you're lowballing, and that's fraud, and we're not going to deal with it. So we need to get a Vanguard in here or another quality, top quality firm and let them come up with another idea and another suggestion. Because if you do something like arbitrage that PFM just suggested, if the market interest rates tank, then guess what PFM does? They call the bonds and get paid a second time, and they reissue the bonds, and then a third time, and then a fourth time at $1 million a pop for this kind of money that the taxpayers will be paying PFM. So this is about PFM, this is not about Pennsbury. Without a second opinion, I believe at this point any board member that votes for it should be held personally liable because they did not do their due diligence and they did not complete their fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers, and they did not do the job that they were elected and sworn in to do. You were sworn in to act with fidelity. You are not. I want you to go to Mr. Meadows. Mr. Meadows is here tonight. I just saw him. The administration is saying that he is the one that estimated square footage for the new building. You currently say that you have 700,000 square feet for the 2 buildings. You are saying that Mr. Meadows is estimating that he only needs 500,000 square feet. How does that happen? You only got 27,000 square feet for the gym, for the one gym you're losing, and half a cafeteria. The numbers don't work. The square footage is lowballed to keep the numbers down so that it doesn't go to referendum. Now, PFM is at 301 million. Mr. Burdick only has 302 to spend. Isn't that convenient? Just under the part where the number where where everybody gets a say in what's going on. You say we need bigger classrooms. How can you downsize from 28.6% and say we need bigger classrooms? The original estimate that our superintendent gave us was for 2,800. At the last meeting, well, now it's between 2,800 and 3,000. What is it?
Thank you,
The
Mr.
numbers
Abrams.
change every day.
Thank you, Mr. Abrams.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Donna Abreska.
You'll learn it in 4 years that we're working together.
Good evening, Donna Abresha, Falls Township. As a newly elected board member that will be sworn in December, I have to pose the question of what's the hurry? Now, if we discuss this tonight and we put it on the agenda to be voted on next month, the question I have is, the options that must be explored and investigated on the proposal of knocking down both east and west entirely. One can only assume that this is being rushed through in an effort to use the vote of a lame duck board member. This is the largest spending package posed to the taxpayer, probably in the history of the district, other than when we actually built the schools. And it's going to impact taxpayers and our tax rolls for decades to come. I just feel like there are questions and things that we have to look at. There are far too many considerations and questions to push this through. The numbers are all over the place. They changed. Tonight they were different than what I saw a month ago. And I'm just asking that we slow down and wait for the new board to be sworn in. We were elected to do what's best for Pennsbury as a whole, and we owe it to our students and our taxpayers to be sure the numbers presented are fully vetted and accurate before we spend this astronomical sum of money. By pushing this through and voting on by a lame duck board, you are disenfranchising the over 3,000 people who voted for me. And here again, I'm not saying I'm against or for. I haven't made a decision because I haven't looked at any accurate numbers yet, and we don't really know. So I'm just asking that we not put it on the agenda for the next week, that we slow down, that we investigate, that we do our due diligence, that we make sure all of our numbers are correct and factual, and we're sure about, I get it's an estimate when you build, but how it's really going to impact the taxpayer or not, and just do what we have to do to not disenfranchise people who just voted in on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Dave Aarons.
Good evening. David Aarons, Pennsbury School District. It seems that the current endeavor is a last-ditch effort on behalf of some members of the current board to push through a project, if that is the case, using a non-incumbent or lame duck. I don't understand what the urgency would be in us moving forward with this without fully vetting the numbers. That seems to be the responsible thing to do. This endeavor thus far has been fraught with duplicity, and one need only look at the inaccuracy of the figures currently in dispute. The presentation by the consulting firm PFM Consulting was clearly steered to produce a desired outcome, and that would be continuing the current board's trend toward irresponsible spending, which will negatively impact the taxpayer base for generations to come. It's a very serious endeavor, and I remind you that it is the taxpayers' money, and as stakeholders, we all have the responsibility of exercising proper stewardship of the taxpayers that we all serve, not the other way around. It's the least we can do for all stakeholders, and we are all stakeholders in the district. So the mission of the school board should be to exercise due diligence and conduct a complete and thorough investigation of all the available options. It's time to discontinue the trend toward destruction of a once blue-chip district, which is now a failing district due to its endemic irresponsibility and capriciousness. I thank you one and all.
Thank you. Next, Mr. David Mann.
Good evening. My name is David Mann. I'm a 2001 graduate of the district, and I currently have a child in the district. When I graduated, my last name was Podrasky, not Mann. My comments about the accessibility of Pennsbury's future high school. To give you some background on my experience in the district, in 1997, just days after completing the 8th grade at BAME, Charles BAME, I suffered a diving accident and injured my spinal cord and left me with a diagnosis of quadriplegia. I did my 9th grade year from the hospital and at home. I began attending Pennsbury High School West, then called Medill Bear in 1998. And then from 1999 through 2001, I attended Pennsbury High School East, then called just the Pennsbury High School. I was a salutatorian of the class of 2001. After graduation, I went on to college and graduate school and earned bachelor's, master's, and PhDs in economics. And I'm currently a principal researcher at Mathematica, where I apply my training to improve programs that provide supports to people with disabilities. I'm deeply grateful to Pennsbury for all that it has done for me. The instruction I received in the district provided the foundation necessary to achieve my goals. When my wife and I were deciding where to raise a family, Pennsbury was at the top of our list because of my positive experience. I encourage Pennsbury to make accessibility a core consideration as it moves forward with its new high school project. When I toured the current high school buildings in late September, they were largely as I remembered. When I was in high school and newly injured and had an aide provided by the district with me most of the time, I thought that this was just the way it is. I knew nothing different and thought my experience at Pennsbury was standard. However, 26 years after my injury and 22 years after graduating from Pennsbury, I realize now that Pennsbury High School East and West have major accessibility shortcomings. With the exception of the addition to West in the mid-2000s, the buildings were built before major disability legislation, including the Rehabilitation Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. The new high school will need to comply with federal disability regulations from the start, but I encourage Pennsbury to be intentional about making its new high school accessible. Expert reviews of building plans can discover compliance issues, but they can also reveal opportunities to make low-cost or no-cost changes that improve accessibility beyond what is required by law. If I can help with this planning in any way, please let me know. My desire is to help is rooted in my appreciation for what the district has done for me. My hope is that students with disabilities in the district will be able to fully access the high school, just like their able-bodied classmates have access to the high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak is Mr. Colin Coyle.
Thank you all. My name is Colin Coyle. I'm a graduate of the class of '99, who is the father of 3 future Falcon graduates. And I had the honor of being selected for this year's Community Committee for the future of Pennsbury High School. I'm here to speak in favor of a new building, because renovation, rather than building a new structure, will force significant compromise on the next generation of Pennsbury students. Pennsbury-educated scientists have made microbiology breakthroughs in Antarctica. Our engineers have built the modern internet. Our choral students have earned accolades in the opera houses of Europe and penned Broadway hits. Our communication students are on nightly newscasts, and our theater students are on TV and movie screens all over the world. Our athletes train in spare rooms and moldy gyms and go on to represent our country in the Olympics. Touring these buildings, I was continually struck by how impressive the students of Pennsbury are. To accomplish what they do, to earn the accolades and recognition for our district and our communities while working against the facility that they're in is amazing. And this is before we even consider the accessibility shortcomings of our facilities. So much of the space that we have and that renovation will force us to keep was built for their grandparents. These students do so much despite the facilities they spend their days in, despite the compromises that we adults have made on their education. And it's time that we give our students a facility that matches their abilities, rather than one that they need to overcome to meet their potential. So let's stop compromising on our students' futures, invest in those kids, and let the Falcons fly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Colin Coyle, did you state your name?
I did, but it's Colin Coyle, just in case I didn't.
I heard. Oh, you're municipal.
Lower Makefield Township.
Thank you.
I had extra time.
Falkovitz. Mike Falkovitz, Falls Township. I was at the finance meeting that I thought was going to be the facilities, but you guys put them all 3 together and I lost order. I'm in favor of a new building for the simple fact that in my 30 years of construction, I see no inherent value in renovating West Campus. I attended West Campus. My class in '94 was the first to merge. I remember the modular trailers on the backside of what is West, but the former Medill Bear. I went through East when it was 11th and 12th to Pennsbury. I have 5 kids that have gone through this district. 2 have graduated. One's a graduate of Drexel University. One is in the tech school right now, and 2 others are in the high school. There is no architectural significance to the school. There is no historical value in the building. My father and his family moved into Levittown, Fairless Hills in the late 50s when U.S. Steel was being built up. Shortly after this building was built. My father passed away almost 10 years ago. There is no reason that the next generation of students should have to go through a building that their great-grandparents were the first attendants of. It is disgraceful to think that we would consider adding more onto a building whose footprint is utterly massive and most of it is unusable space. On a side note, I'm a member of Steamfitters Local 420. The difference in the cost between the new building and the renovation is not electrical work. The electricians union and any other electrical contractor does not care about whether it's a new building or an old building. It's the same amount of work. It's civil work, which is done for the foundations and all. It'll go to operating engineers and laborers to do that work. The vast majority of the difference is going to be civil work. I also want to say that I'm a little disappointed that people believe that this is a rushed process. This has been going on for months. There's been a lot of time and effort that went into this. And I personally want to thank Mr. Sanderson for being my school board director for 16 years. Yeah, and he led us through a redistricting, a closing of Village Park, and a lot of trouble with Simon Campbell and some other board members. So on that note, I want to thank you, Mr. Sanderson, and have a good night.
Thank you. Are there any other people who wanted to speak and didn't have a chance to sign up on the sign-in sheet? Okay, can you write your name on the sheet? And Ms. Rachel McCauley.
Hi, Rachel McCauley, Lower Makefield Township. I just want to speak as a mom whose kids are going to be attending Pennsbury. Right now they're little, but they're going to grow. And my husband went to Pennsbury. I did not, but my husband went to Pennsbury. I have friends that work inside Pennsbury High School and have told me that I can't send my kids there as it is right now. And that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this project. And renovating is just going to try to cover up some of the problems that are there. I'm in favor of a new high school. I believe in a new high school. If a new high school doesn't happen, I don't know that we're going to send our children to Pennsbury. We might need to make another decision. So I understand that there are cost implications, there are taxes, and people have feelings about that. I don't care. I want what's best for my children and their education, because that's first and foremost. And like someone mentioned previously, they need the facilities that are appropriate for them to be everything that they can. And that should be first and foremost, in my opinion. So thank you for all the work you've done up to this point to get us to the point where we're close, hopefully, to having a new building being built and approved. And I fully support and thank you for your hard work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and close public comment at 7:55. Which will take us to informational items. George, Mr. Steele, do you want to start with the Giza project?
So as you know, the Giza project's been on the agenda for quite some time now. It was anticipated that we would have it completed by the end of the year. It's a real simple, we meet every Thursday regarding this. It's been completed with the exception of the chillers, which aren't going to show up until the end of February. That was already a known issue, but Quarry Hill and Penn Valley have been completed with the Univent replacement. Manor got their balance of their equipment about 2 weeks ago. Half of it, well, better than half of it, we're about 60% complete, and they anticipate being done by the end of the month. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Next, we have Charles Bain and Charles Bain South updates.
Good evening. Mike Spatafor with Dewey Engineering. I'm the senior project manager for BAME and also working on the capital projects with George. We're going to give a quick update on all of those right now. So scheduled for the 2024 summer projects, there are actually 4 roofs. There's only 3 listed here. I forgot to add Makefield Elementary School. William Penn, we're doing the science wing. It's a partial roof. Penn Valley is also a partial roof. It's the flat areas, not the shingles. And Oxford Valley is a full roof replacement on the entire building. The camera projects for 23, I have an update here following. And then for the summer of 24, we have 3 more buildings that we're going to add to that camera program. Walt Disney is 1, Oxford Valley, and Eleanor Roosevelt. And the administration building met with George and the IT department, and we went over what we think is going to be the scope of work. So our next step is to define that scope and put the budget together, and then we'll have follow-up conversations about steps moving forward and bidding that project. And then I have the BAME update on what our progress is there, and Jamie will do the PICO update and the information on the high school. So you want to go to that. Here's the first one. So we did start the surveys on the buildings. Just a picture here from when we were up on Oxford Valley. We'll be working on the smaller roofs. We are anticipating going through the Garland DBS program, and Oxford Valley would be one that we're going to do a full public bid process on that. So one of the things we're talking about tonight is a request to waive the responsible contractor policy like we have in the past couple years for these roof projects based on their size. We want to be able to get good competition on those projects. So that's one of the things on your action item list this evening. Next one. Same with the cameras. We are working on the backgrounds, get the camera placement, and then we will come out and do our surveys. Basically the same process that we've done on the previous ones at Manor, at Afton, West, and William Penn. So we'll be working with the safety committee and George to get the camera layouts, and then we'll put those documents together and get those out to bid for we're anticipating January. So we get out early, we get good competition, and we get set up and materials ordered for the summer programs. Server room, this is just a picture and some of the items that we had talked about. So there's equipment, upgrades, and finishes within this room that they want to make improvements on. You can tell in the picture there's some need for expansion, cable management, and then to get these systems properly onto the emergency backup system and an uninterruptible power source in case there's any kind of an outage in the district. One of the things that's desperately needed in here is upgrading the HVAC system to maintain the temperatures. Obviously, you need to cool the space. So, and then the finishes would be new ceilings, new floors, paint, hardware, those kind of things. Also, security for that room would be part of the access control program already in the building for swipe cards, so that we have security for that. Moving on to the BAME update. So there's a lot of things going on at BAME in the next coming weeks, months, and obviously this weekend, actually. So we are in a position right now that we are going to move early into the phase 2 classrooms. The point of that is, the sooner we move those kids, we can get some of the existing electrical panels and services out of the addition area that we've been carrying along throughout the demolition and the new construction that's going on now. We have our inspections are scheduled with Lower Makefield Township. George and his staff are getting ready and set up for that move. And obviously Travis has got his staff getting ready to do that as well. The anticipation is to get the rooms ready and to the district by the weekend of the 17th and 18th. And then they will slowly start to move and pack their things and move them over the Thanksgiving break. So when teachers and kids come back after the Thanksgiving break, rooms will be set up, done, and they can actually walk in and start learning. It won't be a moving process when kids come back. Boiler room, we are now running on the new boilers and pumps that are in the boiler room. We're kind of done in there until we get into the summer of '24 when the chillers start to go online and more electrical replacement systems will go into the STEM wing, the auditorium, and the gymnasium. Here's a quick update on the addition. Even these pictures are a little bit behind where the progress is now from when I took these. The building is now closed in and watertight. Temporary heat will be on there next week to keep contractors moving within. The brick is much further than this. All the floors are poured. MEP, ductwork, wiring, everything is going on. So we're working with the contractors to keep the project moving and gain some time on that. Our next milestone for this one is we need to move the office out of the existing and into this addition just before the Christmas break so that we can have abatement done over the break while students and staff are gone. So that's our next big push. And we're working with all these contractors and our subs to make sure that we can meet that milestone. That's the important one. Everything, we're also doing some prep work for the phase 3 areas, which is the gymnasium and then the main office wing that we'll be moving out of. And then we'll get started on them in January. And those areas will go right into the summer, and then obviously the summer will be the rest of the building. So we're trying to get as much prep work done in those areas as we can. I got it.
As far as the addition goes, we've had very good contractors on the job who've gotten the district to the point that the new heating season is now under wraps with the new boilers. Our mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractors have been performing well. We have had challenges with the general contractor, and we've been working with district administration and also the solicitor's office on sending out all of the tools in our specifications toolbox in order to get them to perform. General contractor's been working extra hours, has been working weekends, will work again this weekend. This slide shows the difference in the addition just in a couple of weeks. We still have a lot of weeks, a short number of weeks left before the big milestone in order to move the office, and we'll continue to push them along in order to get to the completion. So we're working on a daily basis really to find every trick in the book in order to get finished and help everyone along, and most importantly, protect the district from risk. Just a quick budget update on BAME Middle School. As you take a look at the budget, the highlighted item is for the current contingency, and we're actually $240,000 to the good on where we started. Up until this evening, there have been no change orders on the project, and this includes some of the newer costs in the soft cost category for furniture that has been purchased for the new office suite. On the action list for the Facilities Committee this evening is a $34,000 change order for the environmental contractor. Lead paint was identified on the gym steel that needs to be abated before new steel connections are made to support new rooftop units. So that's the cost that's been identified. That cost has been cut in half through efforts of the construction team in order to reduce cost and make the effort more efficient, and we're ready to proceed with that abatement with the board's approval. One other good note on BAME is that we've been working with district administration and also a representative to go after the PICO rebates for the new lighting, LED lighting systems, and also the HVAC in BAME. We're pleased to report a rebate check in the amount of just over $62,000 will be coming the district's way, and that we've significantly reduced the power consumption of BAME as a result of the energy conservation measures in the new design. We're also working on a rebate for the HVAC equipment. You can understand that that's quite a bit more complicated than simply lighting, and that work is underway, as well as a rebate for the LED stadium lighting that's been put in. So all of this is in the works with PECO, and I'm sure we're also coupling that with rebate work that will come as a result of the GISA projects. One last update for you on the sewer allocation process that has been taking a very long time, so that phase 3 of the stadium can proceed with toilet rooms and team rooms. This is a process that started in October of '22 to get sewer allocation for the high school site, which is not recorded with DEP at the current time. Presently, here in the October and November timeframe is a 60-day review period for what's called the Component 4 of the sewer module, which I'm pleased to say has been signed by Falls Township and yet now needs to be endorsed by DEP. That takes us to the end of the year and into the new year, at which there needs to be a final resolution by Falls Township to approve it, and then another long review period by DEP to finalize it. I would like to think that we are in the final throes, and we'll see you again at next month's meeting in order to talk about phase 3 of the stadium in some more detail. That's it for our capital projects update. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions?
Could you just review for us? You spoke about the roofing projects that are slated to be done and ask if we could waive the responsible contractor policy. So can you give the public a little more feedback on why that might be necessary?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Consistent with what the district has chosen to do for roof projects for the past several years, what we've found is that as a result of the policy and the requirements that really restrict the number of bidders that are attracted to a roof project, because there's only one program that provides apprenticeships for roofers, what we've found is that if the waiver is granted, we can get many more local roofing contractors to come and bid on the project, which means greater competition and hopefully lower bid prices. That also doesn't mean to say that any roofer can come and bid on a Pennsbury project. You're familiar with the contract documents that we employ that set the standard for what contractors have to have completed as far as this type of work in school districts and with all of the requirements that school districts have. So there still is a large number of roofers that are local to the Pennsbury district who will be interested in these projects, and we're just trying to get, excuse me, the most competition and hopefully also the lowest price and the best quality continually for Pennsbury.
So there will be safeguards in the bidding, people who can bid without the...
Absolutely. In addition to state statutes to be lowest and responsible, we have requirements for contractors to have been actively completing projects of this size, whatever the dollar amount is, in school district work with the type of roof systems that you're employing. Now, in this case, Mike explained that we're working primarily through Garland DBS, which is a cooperative purchasing program, and so those contractors have already been vetted in a bid process by the state, and then they provide competitive numbers to Garland DBS, who provides the product, and then Garland provides your warranty on the roof. So that's almost a belt and suspenders method of doing roofing projects.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions about the information items, we'll move on to discussion items, and the only item under discussion is the high school project update.
Great, thank you very much. I'm not sure, Dr. Smith, if you want to preempt my presentation or just run right into it. Okay. With respect to Pennsbury High School, This is a presentation that's been provided to the Facilities Committee previously, and it's been edited probably several times in the past several really years. And just to provide some context here, our role at Dewey Engineering is really to set up the logistics and the structure to help the district make a decision as it moves forward with whether it's renovation or new construction. There is a good amount of due diligence, there is a good amount of information that needs to be collected and ultimately presented, not only for you to make your decision, but if you're to move ahead in either case with a design RFP for an architect, there's a lot of information that needs to be collected in order to make that process worthwhile and also competitive. And so that's what I'd like to speak to this evening. And this is a process that I have really been involved in since 2018. And some of the highlights there included a feasibility study completed by Bonnet Architecture in 2019, I believe, educational specs written for the high school and also for the district in at about the same time that was commissioned by the board at that time. A study performed by KCBA Architects on the high school in 2021, in which an educational program was put together and a concept was actually put together for a 9th grade center. So there has been much discussion and public presentation on all of the options and the various costs and the various pluses and minuses with respect to the high school program. So this year we were asked to do really the same thing and proceed in order to gather information so that you could make a decision, and that's what we've been doing really since the beginning of 2023. If we move to the next slide, some of those activities included getting a complete topographic and boundary and utility survey of the entire high school site. That's the entire property. So we had a surveyor come in and also ground penetrating radar come in and identify where the utilities were, where the corners of the property were, did topographic survey. And so now we have CAD documents that completely detail what's happening on the high school site. And you can certainly understand that that's necessary if a design team was to come in and put together a concept for the district. So that was step one. Step two was to perform some preliminary geotechnical or underground investigations, which are essential for the civil work associated with a project of this size. There's two components here. One is to take a look at what's under the ground and find out where rock is and where water is and what the quality of the soils are. And the other is to start to investigate the requirements for stormwater management. And the stormwater management requirements for a project on this site are much, much different than when East was built, when West was built, when West was renovated. There are much more stringent requirements for stormwater management than there ever have been. Essentially, when you build, you have to make sure that you retain more stormwater after you're done building than had left the site before development was done. So very stringent requirements by not only Falls Township, but by DEP. And so that was the work performed by the geotechnical testing agent, identified where rock existed, what the quality of the soils were, where water was, and they did their infiltration testing. The results are in reports that have been provided and would ultimately be given as a part of the RFP to an architect, and they're required whether we do renovation or we do new construction. So this is, again, just good information, due diligence in order to be ready for a project in whatever form it takes. In summary, and that's fine to go to the next slide, in summary, we found good infiltration, which is a good thing for underground stormwater. We found that bedrock was awfully deep, which is a good thing for civil construction so that we don't have to remove a lot of rock. We found that much of the soils, as we found when we did the design for the stadium, were good and useful for structural fill. There are some locations where there are some existing fills on the site that would have to be handled. There will be some soil exchange required for a project really of any type. But there was nothing that would suggest that building around West or in the fields on the site would be prevented by some type of unforeseen condition in the form of geotechnical effort. Here you see on the screen many of the borings that were done, and rock was not encountered. So this is a very good thing, not only for the speed of construction, but also the cost of construction. The next thing that we did is took a look with a environmental firm at any hazards that existed within East and West. This is important because prior to renovation or prior to demolition, whichever way the board chooses to go, these hazards need to be addressed prior to doing the work. And so the summary here of both what the materials are that need to be abated prior to demo so that we're not creating a hazard in the air or that we're not creating a hazard in the building while renovation occurs are listed. I won't go through all of them, but you can see that there's a grand total cost estimated for renovation by the environmental consultant of just over $1.7 million. We've pushed that up with some escalation to a round number of $2 million. That's been completed in our initial budget, and there'll have to be some room for escalation based on the understanding of when this abatement would actually occur if you do renovation or new construction. So that's the due diligence investigation on the site that was performed. And the next thing we did was try to put some parameters around the educational program based on the information that has been collected over the years. And just a summary here, as far as square footage, West High School just a shade over 351,000 square feet, and East at just over 208. Couple of components of those two buildings. The auditorium, or the cave that we know it as at West, has a seating capacity of 620 students, which is rather small, but it's a fantastic space as far as flexibility. Keller Hall, an even more beautiful space at 580 seats. And the gym seating at West is interesting because there's little or none. Obviously, we can't have large events at West. So those are some of the interesting things about the big box spaces at West. At East, we have an auditorium that's larger and, of course, a much larger gym that has seating in it. And then the natatorium stands alone and the most program stands alone in the modular trailers for a grand total of about 578,000 square feet of total educational space. Back in 2019, the chart you see to the left is the educational program that was initially developed by KCBA Architects with the high school administration team and also district administration. And they arrived at an educational need space that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 square feet. And that became the basis for the concept that was developed at that time for a 9th grade center to be created within West. And you may recall that KCBA provided some sketch drawings and the district discussed that. And I think what came out of that exercise was the idea that we didn't want to, or you didn't want to, separate 9th grade as a 9th grade center, but assimilate 9th grade into the high school program. So since then, if we go to the next slide, what we've done is take a look again in the past year with Reggie and the educational team and administration at that program in order to what I'll call right size it. And we sat down and took a look at all of the spaces and the current needs of the district, and some are new, in order to identify what could come of the high school and how it could work. And so the capacity and the size that we arrived at with Reggie actually was quite a bit smaller, at a max of 475,000 square feet for grades 9 through 12. That program includes 19,000 square feet for an auditorium that's right-sized for the staff. The pre-K learning lab, the most, they're included. Right-sized classrooms. As you know, part of West High School has middle school-sized classrooms, so we've included space for right-sized classrooms with 28 seats, a gymnasium that would seat 3,000, and we're talking about a capacity or an enrollment, in the high school that would be in the 2,800 range based on the prior demography study that's been done, and I know you're in the throes of updating that information. 8-lane pool is included in that program if the existing was not to be saved. So that's a decision as we move forward. And it also includes 2 cafeterias with 1 kitchen. And that program suggests that 2 cafeterias on either side of a kitchen, as opposed to 2 cafeterias that were in the KCBA plan that were on either end of the building, would be a more appropriate way to handle the lunch crowd. Right-sized admin for the increased population of 1 building with the nurse incorporated and the appropriate support spaces. One of the biggest changes that allowed the square footage to come down is the 500,000 or so square footage is based on the current model where every teacher in the high school has their own classroom. And what's been done in the other model is to create instructional planning centers for teachers so that when they're not in class, they have a place and a desk and a place to store their belongings and to do their planning, everything necessary. But that ultimately minimizes the actual 28 student classrooms that you have to build and gives us a little bit more space. And so it right sizes the school for the population. So that effort has really been what's been happening over the past couple of months. So to kind of sum up where we are, we have a program that's roughly between 475 and 505. There's flexibility there for you to determine what that program would be. The existing West High School at 351,000 square feet means that in order to achieve 475 to 505, an addition is needed of between 124,000 square feet and 154,000 square feet. But it gets a little more complex at West because perhaps the pool would be new. Perhaps the gym would be new. The auditorium perhaps would be new. The cave is not ADA accessible, and it's got some other challenges. So the additions would actually be larger. They would be in the order of 189 to 219,000 square feet. And really part of an architect's role, if you choose to bring them on at this point, is to finalize these numbers with you and with the community in order to determine what the size of the spaces are and get these down to numbers that are final numbers, not ranges as I've shown them. So a new building with that program would be 475 to about 505 for 2,800 students. That's a building that includes a pool. The option still exists to simply renovate the existing pool and locker room building. Renovations and additions at West, you have the additions number there. We have some demolition that would have to be done. We've identified that the cave is problematic from a number of areas. A new addition for an auditorium is desired. The same thing for renovation or new construction for a gym. And then ultimately, the choice is how light or heavy is the renovation through the rest of the building. And ultimately, we've estimated that the total square footage of a renovated West would be 518 to 546 or 48 and change thousand square feet. So a renovated West, really because of the segregated nature of the building, the circuitous hallways and everything, you can understand in order to gain the same program that you would get in a new building will obviously be somewhat larger. So then we turn to cost. And then we're renovating West first as an option, and we're building additions, again in the range of 189 to 220,000 square feet. So you'd have a building that is probably between 515 and 550,000 square feet. Then we've got a renovation range that we've provided. Again, I mentioned light renovation, heavy renovation. That's something to be determined. We can't renovate every square foot in West. It's just not cost feasible. How much is demolished? These are the things that would be determined with the help of the architect who's brought on board. The addition range, the costs are identified there, $375 to $410 a square foot. The numbers I'm providing there are for building cost only. They do not include the site improvements and the soft costs. They're lower down on the slide, just to be clear for everyone. I've included the cost for the abatement and for the demolition of East and portions of West. We also have to consider what you would do for Village Park. It's currently housing one grade level for the BAME renovation. That could be replaced with a field, or it may be restored for some other purpose. And soft costs and contingencies. And so the total cost on renovation depends really on the intensity of the renovation, but you see the range there from, I got to look over here, $185 million, excuse me, to $240 million. That's the range. Budget for new construction, which, as we mentioned, is a smaller square footage. The range for new construction is the same as far as cost. The determination of the pool being included, how large the auditorium is, also thinking ahead as to what replaces East. There has been some discussion about a transportation facility there. They need to be determined, and all of that would happen with the help of a design team. The abatement and demolition is there as well for East and West with a range, the site improvement cost as well, contingency, and we're looking at a number that could range between $235 and as high as $270 million. But the direction that we've been given is that we want to cap that cost, if possible, at no more than $250 million. So that's the charge, that's the challenge that we want to give to a design team. That means they need to take your program into account, understand what your needs are, not only from a program standpoint, from a budget standpoint as well, and provide proposals along those lines, whether it's new or renovation. We finished that work, and at that time the community committee was brought on board, and I received a number of questions from all types of places, I think, in the Pennsbury School District about the project and how it would, quote, work. I don't want to go into great detail on all of these, but I'll touch on a few. It really highlights the difference between renovation and new construction. And one question is very obvious. How do you renovate West without disrupting school? And it's very challenging, as we've seen at Penwood Middle School, as we're seeing now at BAME. There will be concessions made. There will be temporary measures. Simple things, just the walk itself, going back from east to west. If we're renovating a portion of West, the walk will have to be relocated in order to get students in the building at periods of renovation. We'll have to think of ways in order to make sure that we're safeguarding the educational process and students and staff at all times. This goes to indoor air quality and using negative air machines to make sure dust gets out of the building. There'll be temporary partitions. Students, staff, and administration will at times be forced to relocate in the building. But a renovation, when there is no other option, it's been done by many school districts, certainly around Pennsbury. It is possible. Summers will be intense, there will be night work, and ultimately the project will likely be somewhat longer because of the time it takes in order to renovate. And that's identified in the second question here, where I've laid out a very schematic timeline as far as renovation and new construction. I think everyone can understand that if I'm building a new building in a relatively green field and I'm able to put a fence around it, I can put that building up a lot faster than I can do a phased renovation. The challenge on the new construction side is that I don't have all the space I need for all of the parking and everything that'll accommodate a new building. Some of that has to happen when portions of West are demolished, but it's still absolutely possible with phased site work renovation. So that makes the end of the the end of new construction slightly longer because I have to abate and then demolish portions of West to build parking lots and perhaps fields and stormwater measures. So, and that's the sequence of events, is to build, demolish, restore, and right in the middle, depending on renovation or new construction, there's an abatement step. With renovation, abatement is a long process that goes in phases. With new construction, you abate the building to remove the hazards prior to a demolition team coming in, demolishing a building, because we don't want any of those hazards to become airborne. Why don't we go to the next slide? Is it safe? This is really the overarching question with a renovation. Is it safe to renovate West? Can it be done? Yes, absolutely. And I mentioned already, swing space needs to be provided to accommodate not only movement of students, but also what happens to the walk so we can get back and forth between East and West. What do we have to do in order to put new MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems in? We have to remove the ceilings like we did at Penwood, like we did at BAME. This is one of the challenges at West, but it's something that could be overcome. There's not much space above the ceiling. If you pull ceiling tiles out of the corridors in West, you bump right into the insulated pipes that are right above the ceilings. There's very little space. And so what that does is constrict the space and make it challenging to install ductwork for forced air HVAC system. Dustproof barriers, negative air machines I mentioned, temporary measures, and there'll be times when there's no gym and no auditorium possibly as part of a renovation. The last question is something that I can partially answer, but it's really your knowledge of the district dictates. Will a new building attract staff? Will new facilities improve test scores? Will new facilities make things better for Pennsbury? There is common knowledge that identifies that new facilities, especially when they have excellent HVAC systems, enhance the learning experience, provide community pride, and at times increase home values. There's lots of studies that go both ways. That's particular to your district. You know your district best. You've seen what's happened to the price of homes and how your test scores have progressed. And so that's really something that I invite you to study and see based on the experience of all of the schools that have been renovated or built new in Pennsbury over the years. A couple other questions. What other funding mechanisms are available in order to help you in this effort? Unfortunately, the answer is that there are not many options available to school districts. We did get an ACE grant for the Penwood Middle School project in the amount of $1 million. That grant was not available for the BAME Middle School. A new grant that's available is the RACP grant. That is a state grant. And we've started that process in order to create what's called an allocation with Bucks County or perhaps with Falls Township to get you in line for legislative action that may put money in the district's hands. We've had success in doing this in the Interborough School District and also in Bethlehem and some other school districts. This is a lengthy process, but at this time, in order to get large dollar amounts, that seems to be the one and only large grant opportunity in order to help school districts. Who knows what the future brings, what happens when the rest of the state budget is passed and where that will go. But right now, that's what I can report to you as far as getting sizable grants for a project of this type. Safety and security, I'd like to focus just on security for a moment. Whether it's renovation, whether it's new construction, security and working with local emergency responders has always been a priority of the school district. Lower Makefield has worked with us at Penwood and also at BAME in the design of the actual project. I would imagine Falls Township would be eager to work with us as they have, for instance, at the stadium in helping you, whether you choose to go renovation or new. Either project is a community effort, and I know that the township and emergency responders would be eager to provide all of the input that they could in order to make the safety of the building a really high priority. I spoke to cost escalation. We have to determine what the scope is and what the timeline is to see if there's any additional escalation on the cost that I've identified tonight. There's been a question also about sustainability overall for projects like this and whether there's any difference between renovation and new construction. The district has always had a priority to maintain a sustainable aspect of every project that it's done. You have numerous LEED certified buildings in the district. I'm sure that this would be no different, just like BAME incorporating energy conserving measures like LED light fixtures would be high on the priority list, and also energy efficient HVAC systems, using local materials and certainly recycling to the extent that's possible would be really what we've done with you in the past many projects. And so there's really no difference between renovation and new construction when it comes to sustainability. Unfortunately, the ACE grant that was received for the Penwood project is no longer available from the state. There is a chance that it could come available again by the time this project goes to construction, so we'd keep an eye out for that. In the past, the maximum grant has been actually $2 million, and we'll have to see what the state does as far as reinstituting that grant opportunity. Okay. I'm gonna skip the last questions. They're there for you, and I'm imagining that some of these items are going to be included in the follow-on presentation. I just wanted to end by identifying some of the logistics and how the process for selecting an architect generally works. And what has been done is a request for proposal, an RFP, has been drafted to seek architects with a successful track record in Pennsylvania on public school projects. And this would apply to whether it's renovation or new construction. All of the due diligence data that has been collected in the site survey and the hazards and the utilities and also geotechnical would be included in that RFP. The programming of the building that has been identified would be provided to the architect as well. Your educational specs that were written in 2019 would be provided as well, that identify what happens in each curriculum of the high school. And so this provides the architect really with all of the information necessary in order to put a concept together as a part of his presentation and proposal to you. We would conduct a pre-proposal meeting to allow the respondents to examine the buildings and the site, and of course to ask any questions. And they and their subconsultants, which would be comprised of a civil engineer and also mechanical, electrical, and plumbing subconsultants, would put a concept together to provide with their proposal for you to review, in addition to seeing the credentials of all of the individuals that they would propose to help you on this project. The plan would be for the district to take a look at the concepts, weigh in on the concepts, look at the credentials, perhaps visit schools that the architects have built before, and come up with a summary of your grading, if you will, on the qualifications and the concepts submitted by the architect before you open a separate fee envelope. So this is called a quality-based selection. So you can look at the qualifications of the architect without being judgmental of their fee. So this is a two-envelope process that has been done successfully for the selection of architects in the past. In working and understanding the district's goals and engaging the community, those concepts submitted with the proposal, would be available for public review as well, and for the committee to comment upon. So it's a community decision. And then, of course, the administration and the board would have the final say on an architectural firm that would be hired. In order to make an apples-to-apples selection, we've also drafted the architectural design contract, submitted it to the solicitor's office, received comment, and solidified that. So that contract would be incorporated with the RFP, and that way all of the respondents are really given an apples-to-apples platform in order to give you a very qualified response. From a timing standpoint, if you were to move forward tonight and then carry a decision to the board meeting on the 16th, I think the team would be prepared to issue the RFP immediately following the meeting on the 16th. We'd love to invite the architects in for a pre-proposal meeting the week after Thanksgiving so that they can see the site, see the grounds, hear from you, ask all of their questions. And the concept is that the proposals would be due somewhere near the end of January, giving the district essentially the month of February to review the proposals, make decisions, carry those decisions and that information to the March facilities meeting for discussion, and perhaps bringing it to the board at the March board meeting. And then we would move on with getting under contract, and schematic design would then begin. As far as the overall project schedule that we see, it's listed here on this slide. Hard to read from everybody in the audience, but there are a lot of activities you can understand with a project of this size. There are also a lot of approvals, and those approvals come in the form of, first and foremost, this board's approval of each phase of the work. There are 3 phases: schematic design, design development, and construction documents. There's also the approvals of Falls Township and regulators, including DEP, the Soil Conservation District, and the Department of Health. So that's all part of the land development and approval process. Then there's the work that the architectural team does with your staff, high school staff, and really the end users to put detailed design to each space. What will the gym look like? What will the classrooms look like? What will the science labs look like? How best to set up the administrative offices? And so the end users and all of the staff have a role to play in putting together a comprehensive design. So that design takes place over the course of 24 and into 25, with the desire of going to construction, really if it's new or renovation, in 26, having bids and giving contractors time to procure materials. You may have heard of that dirty word, supply chain issues. I think they're with us for a while. So construction timelines are a little bit extended. And so we've got renovation or new construction, followed by whatever the disposition is of the remaining buildings, of East, of Village Park, and how they get translated into whatever the future holds for those areas. So that's an outline of the concept for the schedule for the total project. There's the logistics, and there's a lot. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know you have a full agenda. So,
Jamie, if you had the ballpark, how much sooner a new versus renovated project would take place? Is that months, years?
I'm gonna, right now, I think I'm gonna put it that I see, maybe 6 to 8 months sooner for new. And you would say, hey, we just go out there and build a new building. The challenge is West has to get out of the way for the full development of the site, for the parking, for the bus loop, in whatever it turns out to be. We have room for the building. There's also fields that get constructed. You construct fields, then you have to seed the fields, then you have to wait for the seed to grow. Or you can do an alternate for sod. Renovation, we know, would be longer. It's just the phased renovation is the most challenging aspect of the entirety for West, and that depends on how much new we're building onto it. The more we build new and not try to renovate, the shorter that time frame may be. The abatement is the thing that you have to do in phases. Every time you move to a new area of the building, you have to first abate, and then you can continue with construction. So that's really the thing that extends the renovation.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to have you emphasize the advantage of a new building to better utilize space with new teaching modalities, with new concepts in teaching. As you'd mentioned, the multi-use classrooms is a different concept that we're not used to. So having a smaller space in a new building really equals less maintenance, less utilities, less everything, but you better utilize the space that you have, which is difficult at the West Campus especially. Correct?
There's many different attributes, and one that we've seen that would stand out, for instance, is the corridors are lined at West
with lockers.
With lockers. And from what we've heard, a very small percentage, it's something less than 10% of the students at West use lockers.
We've heard that out of all the lockers at the high school, only 5, right, Mr. Meadows? Only 5 of them are utilized. That's a lot of space we could use. We don't need to allocate.
So one of the challenges is, well, what do you do with those lockers? Do you take them out? What do you replace them with that is of value to those spaces? One of the common things and themes in the architectural design is natural daylight. And if the lockers were replaced with something that provided some transparency, that allowed some light from the exterior wall to come through and light the corridor, and also provide more security and things, you can imagine how that would work. Very expensive proposition, however, for natural light compared to what you could do with a clean slate. So there's one example of the challenge of a renovation versus new construction, and what you say as far as the efficiency of new construction versus renovation.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you very much.
Now we'd like to invite the representatives from our community committee that evaluated the design, the pre-design of the high school project to come up and give us the results of their findings.
You all set? Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. It is 8:45, and I know there's still more to go, so I'm sure everybody will appreciate brevity, but we'll be thorough where we can. So myself, Terry Poulton, I'm Kevin Griesbaum. I am a resident of Falls Township. I have 2 children in the school district. And I'll let Terry introduce himself when you're speaking.
Terry Poulton. I'm from Lower Makefield. I went to Pennsbury. I have 3 children that graduated from Pennsbury. I was a previous teacher at Pennsbury and a community member and taxpayer at Pennsbury.
Most importantly. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to briefly run through our agenda about the purpose of the committee and its members. The entire group did travel to Upper Merion High School as well as to Avon Grove High School to visit during the school day to kind of experience what being in those schools was like. On a different day, we actually went to East and West and toured those facilities as well. There's a heat map exercise that we walked through with our engineering partners that Jamie was just up here doing, or was referring to. And then finally, we'll get to our recommendation Q&A, and there's some slides in our appendix. So moving on. So I think we've heard a lot tonight. I've been sitting here since the Finance Committee, so I heard a lot of comments around finance and numbers and clarity. I heard Jamie refer to things about ranges versus exact numbers. There are still some things that we need to work through. That is more about the how, and I think what we're going to talk about here is about the what, and really what's possible. So when we went to, when this committee was put together in the late summer under the leadership of Dr. Smith and Principal Meadows, our charge was really about, well, first of all, it was made up of community members, parents and guardians, staff, and students to shape a recommendation on whether or not to recommend a new build or to recommend a renovation. So to that end, we did our tours, and what we did was came up with an assessment, which we're not going to bury the lead too much, but we'll get to what the recommendation is in 1 second. With respect to the makeup of the committee, we have, I'm not going to go through the pie charts, but we have the distribution of roles broken down fairly evenly across student representation, parents, staff members, and community leaders, and then where they are actually from. So we have roles by Fairless Hills, myself, Yardley, Lower Makefield, Morrisville itself. We have residents from New Jersey, and those are our staff who actually represent and work inside of Pennsbury. And then there were some who just chose not to self-identify, so I wanted to include that in the graph as well. There's a total of 17 members on this committee, and the full list is buried in the appendix. I shouldn't say buried, is in the appendix. We met 5 times during the course of the fall. We visited those 2 high schools on one day, and then on a separate day, we went to the East and West facilities to tour those fully. And like I said, the list is in the appendix as well. So moving on. Okay, so the first visit was to Upper Merion High School, just outside of the King of Prussia Mall. So this is a space, and this is some images of our tour. we went during the day, so people gave up their time, and we wanted them to, we want to acknowledge that we all have day jobs, and it was nice to see such a large contingent that actually showed up to the Upper Marion High School. And some of the things that we know, some of the things that we want to highlight of what's possible. It's a 3-story structure with everything under one roof. We're talking about our gymnasium, a concert hall, the natatorium, the ball fields that are adjacent to. The school itself was designed with kind of an open learning concept. Several gathering spaces for students, including like a large commons area, which is in the bottom left. And it kind of resembles, in my mind, what a commons area would look like at a university. This was an impressive structure. We heard Jamie from engineering refer to the use of different materials. Glass was featured prominently in the school, allowing for a lot of natural light through all the hallways, and a kind of more of an open concept that, as we were walking through, you could tell there was a lot more of a community sense, both with the students and with the staff. One of the interesting things too, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, was the use of lockers. I know we were talking about lockers just a minute ago, and they had made the decision not to build lockers. What they did is they designated a space that was for the students who did want, for the 5 students that do want to rent lockers. There's a small space available for them. So that was just an option that they decided to go with. They grouped all of their spaces logically. Choral, orchestra, concert hall, all in one area. Cafeteria together, athletics, all on one side, on a different side of the school. And that's really important because we want to be able to host community events. We want to be able to have athletics, both at the same time, but not sharing one parking lot, not tripping over each other. So that was deliberately designed, that you could tell the architect gave a lot of thought into that. Also some very creative spaces in the upper middle. Their auditorium hall, their entire second level had collapsible seating, creating a flex space that then they could leverage for, in the example that this superintendent gave, was their cheer team was using it as a practice facility, simply because they needed to be inside, and all of that seating collapsed back into the wall. So effective use of space. Moving on to the next slide. So the same day, we then went to Avon Grove, and this is another new school that opened up this year. Very similar to the Upper Marion High School, a 3-story structure, a lot of creative space here as well. You'll see in the bottom left and on the right-hand side, 2 very unique courtyard areas that were really a big hit with, it was instantly recognized by the committee that was there, but clearly it was a nice warm day, the students were out lunching, they can pass through these areas because the building surrounds them, so they're completely protected inside of the school. And so this was a very nice opportunity for students to get fresh air, they could lunch outside, have some downtime. Interestingly enough, Avon Grove decided to install lockers. It was a move that they fully admitted that they bantered around with their committee, so that's something we need to consider if a new build is considered. What are we going to do in that situation? But they chose to do that. They leveraged different design patterns in the school, so Avon Grove had their demographics. They knew they were going to expand, and they knew that was going to happen sooner or later, so they highlighted to us where the break and where an expansion actually would be built. So it was basically an empty field that formed a right angle, but clearly you can go out and you can go up 3 stories in that very specific area. So there's an opportunity to consider things like that in a new build where we can say, okay, this is the area where we need to expand if and when that actually does happen. And then in the bottom middle picture right there is kind of like a maker space, which is really big for the kids who are going into this STEM learning. And this particular area kind of jumped out at me. My son is into engineering, but the maker space really was something that I think Avon Grove leveraged quite well. That space actually opens up out into one of those courtyards that you see, and they actually leveraged. They have drones, they fly drones out into the market, or out into that courtyard area. They use that space for a great number of things. So I think the imagination and the creativity that Avon Grove came up with to leverage their space appropriately really goes all into like what's possible in effectively what you would expect a 21st century school to look like. And so with that, I'm going to actually turn this over to Terry, who's going to talk a little bit about the East and West tour and our recommendation.
Yes. Okay, so actually we kind of really focused on West with the reality that no matter what happens, East is gone. It's a done deal. It's designated for a future transportation center regardless. In taking our tour of West, we toured a lot of the classrooms, a lot of the damage, a lot of the areas that the public just doesn't generally see, evaluated a lot of the flooding issues, grading issues, deterioration within the building, and came back. The reality of the committee is that we really approach this, that the fact that we have to do something is a done deal. The amount of money that the district is going to have to put out and the burden that's going to be placed on the taxpayer is just a simple reality. What those numbers wind up being, after being here tonight and seeing that, different things are all over the place, were really kind of irrelevant to the committee based on the fact that inevitably it's going to be a very, very large figure and a pill to swallow. After going through some of the reviews, like some of these photos are actually our STEM areas. The sinks, the buildings, that beam right in the center actually sits over top of students' desks and drips and leaks on the students' desks. When we started, discussing, where we wanted to go amongst the committee, a lot of the committee members, we've talked amongst ourselves. A lot of us have had meetings and talks with people within our own neighborhoods, our own communities, on what everybody's feeling was about this, what the tax impact was to everybody, what the reality is. And the general consensus is that what it came down to is that West has already had one major renovation so far. It is 16 years old, and here we are again revisiting the same scenario to add more space. West is deteriorating. The reality is that the renovation will not touch 100% of the building. It's mainly focused on new large facility spaces, gymnasium, auditorium, cafeteria, things to accommodate the need to house the student body together in single locations, and then to kind of update where we can in the rest of the building. But I think general consensus was at minimum 40% of the building will not really be touched, which doesn't address the real issues with an aging building. It is actually 1/4 of a mile right now. The building itself is just a skeleton, as Dr. Smith pointed out, referred to it as Franken building, which is what a lot of the kids refer to it as. It is a 1/4 of a mile walk for a student that has a current classroom at one end of the building, at the other end of the building, and then here we are talking about adding even more structure to that, because in our conversations with Dewey Engineering, we know that we can't go up. Where the structure doesn't permit, the structure is what the structure is. We can put new windows in, we can put new paint, we can add a new facade, but we really can't do anything beyond continue to expand outward. Which is what brought us to really what our final recommendation was, is the fact that if we look down the road at another 16 years from now, a new building will actually grant the district the ability to add on any added needs that we may have. There's still undeveloped, although not a lot, there's still undeveloped land within the district that can be developed. The demographics may change. The Morrisville issue may come about, all over again sometime in the next 5, 10, 15 years. If we're looking at expanding again in 15 years, a new building actually gives us that ability to expand to what the students need. But renovation the reality of our conversations with Dewey and everything else that we had discussed with a renovation plan, although it might be a little bit cheaper now, in the long run, in 16 years, if we need more space or we have to change something, then we are right back where we are right now, discussing a new building. Because we're locked. We can't, the building can't go any further. I mean, we'll have students walking 3/4 of a mile to a classroom. So it was the recommendation, the final recommendation from the committee board, that we would recommend to the facilities board that the district pursue a new building platform rather than to pursue, a renovation of the old existing building.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the board?
I just want to thank you guys for all the time you put in. A lot of meetings, a lot of trips.
Oh, thank you.
It's not working. There it goes. But I was just thanking them for all the work they put in, all the trips they've taken to come up and bring us this. Thank you very much.
I want to second that because I've sat with all of you and I know how much of your personal time you've put in and we really appreciate it. Thank you for your feedback.
Yes, also, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Certainly for your recommendations tonight.
Good job, bud.
We made it by 9.
So that brings us to the conclusion of the discussion items, and we'll move on to the action items, Mr. Steele.
Let me do the first action item. So we have a list of action items, the first one being the high school project, enabling us, requesting the board to go out for a request for proposals for the architectural. It is it's a pick one motion. You could, whatever you wanted to do with the renovation or the new building. The second one was explained during the capital project updates, request to waive the responsible contractor clause for the roofing projects only. Do you need me to explain that one any further? I mean, we're just looking in total. We're good, all right?
On the roofing projects, all of them are coming from the state contracts, the CoStar
Well, yes, the three, all but Oxford Valley, are partials, and they're much smaller, and they can be handled, I guess, more quickly and beneficially with the DBS Garland piece. The Oxford Valley is a complete rip and redo, and that would be a total, but based on whatever roofing material, that system that we decided to go with, it could still be a CoStar's project, but we would prefer to bid it just to get the better price and to have the flexibility between either a modified or a rubber roof.
Okay. Thank you.
Item C was a donation of 2 steel soccer goals by the Afton PTO. Their letter of request for you to accept it is included as part of that. Item D is the Eleanor Roosevelt Playground project. It's a deduct change order for the unused allowance monies for the project. That one is now closed out, and I don't think there'll be any issues with that. Yeah. Item E, they also spoke about during the Charles Boehm update. It's the first change order to go through for $34,000, and I think it's like $34,024. It's for the abatement of the lead paint in the gymnasium necessary to get the project completed. Item F is Manor Elementary School is looking to get a sensory playground installation. What we're asking for here is a partial, just to be able to have, in order to complete the project, we would need drawings and specifications so that we could get a permit from the township. All we're really looking for is to allow us to go have Dewey go out and provide a boundary survey and provide drawings and specifications for the asphalt portion of that project. It's roughly, as I recall, it's like 1,210 square feet. And then there's a small sidewalk piece. If you look up on the displays, it's basically the small blue rectangle in the bottom right-hand corner. The playground itself is extensive. It almost runs the full length of the existing play area, but we're only looking for the 1,209 square feet is the actual asphalt area. The balance of the playground equipment would be installed over top of a stone base with a soft surface playground that would, a material that would meet directly to the asphalt, and it allows for the ADA compliance. We're only looking to be able to tell the township, locate it where it is on the property, and just go for the, again, the asphalt and the sidewalk portion.
I think it's a great idea.
All right, the last item on the agenda is the Quarry Hill, replacement of the Quarry Hill gym floor. Sadly, we lost that in a rain event somewhere early October. There was a torrential downpour. The yard drains in the center courtyard were overcome by the amount of rain that had come down in a short period of time. It rolled through the library and across the floors. They thought they had gotten it up where we had vacuumed it up off of the wood floor and the surrounding terrazzo. It had gotten underneath the wood floor, and in the subsequent weeks of drying out, the floor started to buckle. It is being handled as an insurance claim, and as of yesterday, I did talk with the adjuster, and she mentioned to me that the numbers are in line and that she believes that she doesn't see where we wouldn't be able to get that as a reimbursement.
All right. Do I have a motion on action item A?
I'd like to entertain a motion to build a new high school instead of renovate for action item 5A.
Second.
Any board discussion?
I've long thought we'd be just throwing money at West even after a renovation, and it's just all the work they've done, everything I've heard, it's reinforced that idea.
I would like to point out that this is something that should have been done a long time ago. Every day that goes by and we don't have a major facilities disaster at either one of those campuses, someone above is watching us. This project is long overdue, and anyone who thinks that this is a rush job is not working with the right set of information. I want to commend the administration for all the hard work, all the hours and weeks and months we've put into this, because this is a project that should have been done years ago, and every day that goes by, we are taking a bigger and bigger chance. We owe it to our kids, we owe it to our community, and I fully support a new school building.
I think, a rush job. I think since about 2018, the high school campus was discussed. Different versions, and so I don't think it's a rush job. I think everything evolved in the process. I think the recommendations from the committee I fully support. It's the most efficient way to do it, long-term wise. If anybody were to look at an aerial photograph of the West building, it is disgusting. It is just sprawl. There is so many unused or unuseful spaces in that building, in the hallways. The cave is a disaster. It was rightfully, when we had bats in it, they belonged in there, because it's a disaster. I think we're going to see efficiencies and cost savings in the long run in this building. I'm sorry, but I mean, this is discussion also that will be at the board meeting on the 16th. But I would vote to move the new building forward for a vote.
I just also want to point out that there were two other community opportunities to tour the buildings, and I went on both of those tours and I listened to the people from the community who came out to see the buildings. And the vast majority of people who toured the buildings came away saying that they thought we needed a new building.
It also was not talked about too much tonight. I think there's 61 entrances, if I remember correctly, currently. That's a security nightmare, and we'd be adding more. So we're really going to tighten up security with new construction, I believe. So that's one of many reasons why I want to support this.
So if there are no more questions or discussion, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
I'd like to make a motion to also approve items 5B through 5G.
Second.
Any discussion on these items?
No. I'd like to thank the Afton PTO for their donation. It was very nice of you guys.
I'd like to second that. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Also unanimous. Okay. So, our next meeting is at?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't know.
Next week at the action meeting, I will announce where our next meeting is going to be held. We've been rotating so that people can see the schools, and we're not always in one building.
I just have some good news. Today I was at Charles Boehm for the Veterans Observance. It was a lovely program in Oxford Valley. But as I approached the main office to make my way to the cafeteria, 2 young students, 6th graders from Boehm South, were in the office with me, and I was asked to take them to the cafeteria. So of course I like to chat. So the 2 young men and I were walking down, and I asked them where they went to school, and they said, "We go to Boehm South, and we really love it." And that was unsolicited. So thanks to the administration for making Boehm South really special for those 6th graders that are being displaced this year for the Boehm renovation. But I was really excited to hear that.
William Penn. Next meeting's at William Penn.
So our next meeting will be at William Penn in December. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?